Let's do another Green Bay Packers 7-round mock draft. This will be version 8.0. As we near closer and closer to the draft, we are now under 3 weeks away. So that means, including this one, I only have 3 more mock drafts to make of my own. And then, of course, I'll do the Brian Gutekunst mock the day before the draft. Man, it just feels like yesterday the draft process started. Time is flying by. But as we get closer to the draft, things become more obvious, things become more apparent, maybe what the Packers will be selecting in the first round. We really start to hone in on what the Packers may or may not do, which they're already one of the most confusing teams to predict in terms of the draft. Just guess which route they're going to go. So I like to change things up on mock drafts, do different types of mock drafts to show different scenarios that could happen on draft night for the Green Bay Packers. So if this sort of thing does interest you among everything else Green Bay Packers, including all the draft content you could ask for, I'd highly suggest going down and clicking that subscribe button and turning on post notifications so you don't miss any of the videos. Of course, I will be live for the draft on this channel, nights 1 and 2, so I definitely recommend to stop on by to this channel on draft night. Also, a big shout out to this video sponsor, BetUsTV. If you guys are looking for more sports content, definitely go check out BetUsTV on YouTube. I linked their YouTube channel down in the description below. Make sure to go and click subscribe. They also have an account over there on X. It's at BetUsTV. Again, huge shout out to this year's channel sponsor, BetUsTV. Definitely go give them a look. All right, so without further ado, let's dive right into it. Nothing has changed for the Green Bay Packers from last week to now. The only recent signing that happened was Christian Welch, and that happened before last week's mock draft. Now, I guess you could consider a change that maybe Jair stays a Green Bay Packer, so maybe the Packers don't eye to get a cornerback super early in this draft class, but I still think they could go out and get a cornerback in this draft as insurance, because who knows if Jair can remain healthy the entire year, if he does remain a Packer. I'm still under the impression that he will be shopped during the draft, and if a team doesn't get the cornerback that they want, maybe they'll go and trade for Jair on draft night. But other than that, not much has changed for the Green Bay Packers. I have my entire list of players and the spots I see them going, and whether I could trade down, trade up for said players that I like. Over the past couple of weeks, I've released videos going over the Packers fits at particular positions of need, or their threshold fits. We've went over wide receiver, edge, and also cornerback. I'll be releasing the interior defensive line video in a couple days, so be on the lookout for that. So we're also going to be using those charts to really, hone in on the type of players that the Packers might be drafting. All right, so without further ado, let's dive right into the draft. I'm going to bring up the screen, and again, if a certain player falls to a certain point, again, I'm kind of looking at the Will Johnson, the Tet McMillan around 1920. If that does happen, the potential trade up trigger there to go up and get one of those players. But outside of that, I don't see the Packers going up much further than that. They already only have 8 picks in this draft, and we know Gutekunst wants a ton of draft picks, and he said he wants more. So yeah, maybe they could trade up in the first round and then trade down later in the draft to then get their picks back. But I don't really see the Packers giving up a massive draft haul to go 15 and above. It just doesn't really seem like the Packers or something they would do, and based on what we've heard so far from Brian Gutekunst. So either we're going to get to that point or to our pick at 23. So we are on the clock at pick 23. Neither Tet McMillan or Will Johnson fell to 19 or 20. Tet actually went to the Bears at 10. That would be pretty funny if they went, again, another wide receiver in the top 10. I don't really think they need to, but it is the Bears. I could see them also randomly going tight end, like Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland. That would be pretty funny, too. Michael Williams goes at 12. He's a player that's tied to the Packers. Shamar Stewart goes at 14. Will Johnson did fall to 16, so I was monitoring that closely, and I was like, hey, if he falls to 18, 19, I might go and trade up. Again, I've talked about this in previous mock drafts. If he does fall to 19, 20, he's by far, when healthy, the best cornerback out of this class. And Jahdae Barron's very good as well, but I think Will Johnson is the best guy, and you shouldn't overthink it. And if he falls to like 19, 20, go up and get that guy. Jalen Walker goes at 17. He's another player that maybe is on the Packers' radar. Kenneth Grant, I think definitely on the Packers' radar. He goes before us at 21, whereas last mock draft, we traded down and still got Kenneth Grant, which is interesting. Egbuka goes at 22. So we're on the board here at 23. And some interesting players that we're not used to seeing. Kelvin Banks Jr. and Donovan Ezeraku. You guys know that Donovan Ezeraku, of course, played under coach Jeff Hafley. And if you're looking for an edge with a ton of production this past season, rather than a guy like Shamar Stewart, who has the traits, has the athleticism, but didn't have the production, Ezeraku's probably one of your top guys that could be available for the Packers at 23. Luther Burden's also available. We talked about Kelvin Banks. I don't really see the Packers going tackle. They went basically tackle last year in Jordan Morgan. They project him to be their starting left tackle. We're going to re-sign Zach Tom to a mega deal, so he's going to be our right tackle. So I don't really see the Packers spending a top premium pick on another tackle unless they fully think, okay, Jordan Morgan's a guard, right? And maybe Rasheed Walker is going to be too expensive to re-sign. But Gutekunst keeps saying that Jordan Morgan's going to get an opportunity at left tackle. So I don't really see the Packers going tackle. Walter Nolan, I'm not that high on. I know some people are. I don't really like his pad level when you watch the film. I think it works at Ole Miss against his competition, but at the NFL level, he'll need to really fix that to become a disruptor down low on the defensive line. James Pierce Jr., I've mentioned this multiple times. If he continues to fall and he falls to 23, the Packers aren't going to end that trend. And note, PFF has updated their board, so we see players like Savon Ravel. I'm sorry, someone corrected me on that, and I didn't know that's how you pronounce his name. I think it's Savon Ravel. The H is silent. He's now ranked 26th. He's an interesting prospect. Derek Harmon's dropped a little bit to 31. The Packers could definitely be eyeing Derek Harmon if they really want to try to get like just a beast at that 3-tech position, a guy that can get after the quarterback. Trey Amos, someone I think could definitely be a Green Bay Packer, ranked at 32. But maybe they could trade up and still get Trey Amos into the second round. But I think I'm going to go Donovan Ezeraku. I've traded down, I think, the last 2 mock drafts. Ezeraku's usually not available, and he's a little bit shorter and a little bit lighter than the Packers typically draft at edge, 6'2", 247. But the one thing he has going for him that the Packers typically always draft for is long arms. He has 34-inch arms, which is pretty crazy for a guy that's 6'2", 247. I guess weight really doesn't play a factor in that, but nonetheless, a guy that's 6'2", with 34-inch arms doesn't come around often. Now, I think he would fit better into a 3-4 scheme as a stand-up outside edge rusher that can drop into coverage from time to time. But the Packers still kind of did that in their scheme in the 4-3. I think Ezeraku is a terrific player. We saw this past season, 14 total sacks, 26 quarterback hurries, a pass rush grade of 90.5, pass rush win rate of 18.2%, a run stop rate of 10.1%. And of course, you know, if he's on the board and the Packers like him, they're going to get an easy yes or no seal of approval from Coach Jeff Hafley, because this guy knows Jeff Hafley. And another thing that I noticed on the Packers coaching staff website, they just finalized their coaching staff, and we see Vince Ogabasi here, and he talks about, you know, his coaching history, but it specifically mentions mentored defensive end Donovan Ezeraku, who earned second team All-ACC honors in 2022 after leading the team with 8.5 sacks, 14.5 tackles for loss, the most by an Eagle in both categories since 2018. So not only did Vince Ogabasi mentor Donovan Ezeraku, but he played under head coach Jeff Hafley. So the connection is there, and although the height isn't there and the weight's slightly less than their 250 threshold, I mean, it just makes so much sense. A ton of production at edge, and this doesn't mean you're giving up on Lucas Van Ness. It doesn't. All it means is Lucas Van Ness is still going to get more snaps than he did last year, and you're going to have more depth, more talent in that edge room, guys that can get after the passer. You can never have enough of those guys. And Donovan Ezeraku, I think, is perfect value at 23. That's exactly kind of where I have him, right around that 20-25 mark. And I think it's definitely an option for the Green Bay Packers. So we're going to go edge. We're going to go Donovan Ezeraku, edge out of Boston College here at pick 23. All right, so we're back on the board at 54. And as this draft was going along, we were getting to around like 47, 48. And I saw a lot of players still available, such as Derek Harmon was available at 46, which is crazy. Princely Uman-Mielen, I know we already went edge, but I do like him. Maxwell Hairston's a guy I like. But players that kept falling, and I was really, really close to trading up to 50. But as I thought about it more, I'm like, there's a lot of players I like on the board, such as Ravel, Higgins, Morrison. You know, I'm bound to get one of them, and I actually have an option of all 3. They all fell to 54, because Donovan Jackson went at 50, Schweisinger went at 51, Tumola out at 52, which I do like, but again, we already went edge, and Sawyer at 53, so good on edge going in these picks, because we already figured our edge, and I think at this pick, it's definitely between Savon Ravel and Jaden Higgins. I've gone Jaden Higgins a lot. And when you look at wide receiver, there's other options in this draft. If Kyle Williams finally getting the respect he deserves on PFF and climbed all the way up to rank 63, his ADP still around 145. But he's a guy that some analysts have him as like a top 5 draft receiver in this class. Some people, I think you've even seen him at number 2 on, I forget whose board it was. But there's other options at receiver that the Packers could go. Obviously, Trey Harris, Kyle Williams is one of them. Jalen Royals is another. Jalen Noel, I know he's more like of a slot guy, but you can do a lot with him. Isaiah Bond, they've met with. He doesn't really fit their thresholds per se, but a receiver that could definitely be implemented into their offense. Isaac Tesla, Torrey Horton, Pat Bryant. There's a lot of options here, and I've gone Jaden Higgins a lot. And a player that I really haven't gone is Savon Ravel. Very, very intriguing. Coming off a torn ACL is definitely a worry, but when you look at his 2 seasons of play, in 2023, played all 12 games, had an 80.5 grade, allowed 19 receptions on 42 targets, like an absolutely super, super low completion percentage allowed. Same with this year, 8 receptions on 21 targets, and that's only in 3 games, but a 38.1 percentage allowed. The year before this, 62.6 pass rating, had an interception. This year, 48.8 passer rating allowed, had 2 interceptions, an outside cornerback. The Packers need depth at outside, and I think Ravel perfectly fits into the Packers mold at what they like at cornerback. Now, he didn't test, so he doesn't have an RAS, but he is 6'2". He's not 6'3". He's actually 6'2". If you look at his measurements at the combine or when he weighed in and got his height checked, he's 6'2", 194, which right on the mark for what the Packers like. Just under 23 years old. I think if he falls to 254, this is tremendous value. This is a guy that I think honestly could sneak into the first round, if not early second. So if he does fall due to the injury concerns, due to the lack of competition he played against, obviously playing for East Carolina, and he does fall to 54, I could totally see the Packers taking a flyer on Savon Ravel out of ECU. Again, I've went Jaden Higgins a ton, and this is also tremendous value for Higgins at 54, but I am going Savon Ravel, corner out of ECU, here at pick 54. All right, so we're back on the board at 87, so we've done no trades yet, and I was about to trade up if Alfred Collins fell to 80. Probably one of the better run defenders in this entire class. You see the run stop rate, 7.4%. Fits right into that nose tackle position, 6'5", 320. Can play pretty much anywhere on the defensive line, as it says here, from 0 tech to 5 tech. Fits right into where TJ Slayton was for the Packers defense. I really like him, and if he fell to 80, which of course he goes 1 pick before that, I was going to trade up, and it wouldn't have cost much to go from 87 to 80. But he went. Jordan Phillips is another option at nose tackle out of Maryland. He went at 85. So some remaining options at nose tackle, Deone Walker, Jamari Caldwell, and then you're going down to like Cameron Jackson, Cam Horsley, maybe Zeke Biggers there, which definitely we could look at some of those guys. But I think I'm going to trade down here because there's a lot of players available that I like, especially at wide receiver. And I love Trey Harris. You know this. Kyle Williams is a guy that, again, he's raising up on boards, and I could see him going in the 3rd round, no problem. Jalen Royals is also another very talented wide receiver. But I think if we trade down to like 90, mid-90s, we'll still get one of these wide receivers. And Jalen Noel, like I said, more so a slot guy, but can play out wide. Like he definitely can. And I'd be interested to see what the Packers could do with Jalen Noel. A lot of people have him very high on their board, and a lot of people think he'll be like one of the most productive wide receivers out of this draft class. So he's definitely interesting. I like Jordan Burch as well. Wyatt Millam's a nice tackle coming out of this class that I like. Vernon Broughton, defensive lineman from Texas, is a 3-tech guy you could bring in. 13.0 pass rush win rate, good run stop rate, 7.6%, 6'4", 305. So fits that mold for the Packers as well. So I'm going to try to see if I can trade down maybe with, say, Cleveland or something at 94 and pick up an extra draft pick or 2 and still get a receiver. All right, so I'm going to try to trade with the New Orleans Saints instead of the Cleveland Browns. The value in terms of the picks they had just matched up better. So we're going to trade down from 87 to 93, and we're going to pick up pick 184. So we're going to pick up an extra pick there, I believe, in the 5th or 6th round. So go ahead off that trade. It will be accepted. Let's get to our pick at 93. So we're at our pick at 93. Of course, the Saints traded up and got Royals, so that's interesting, right? I think a lot of Packers fans would be a little annoyed if they traded down and lost Jalen Royals, but there's still options. There's still the other 3 wide receivers available at 93, so we picked up an extra pick, and we still get our choice of these 3 wide receivers, which I think is a good option. Trey Harris, I love. I get Trey Harris a lot, but I might go switch it up and go Kyle Williams. He's a little bit lighter for the Packers' liking, 186 pounds, and I do really like Trey Harris for the Packers. I think he's a perfect fit. But again, I don't want to draft the same exact players every time. And the fact that Kyle Williams is finally getting the respect he deserves and rising up boards, I do kind of also want to give him the respect by drafting him in the third round, because I still think he could be a second round wide receiver. I think that's how good he is. And he does an excellent job against man coverage, 89.8 grade versus man coverage. And given his size being a little bit smaller, still 6 foot 186, still great contested catch rate, 62.5%, about an average drop rate, 6.7%, high yards per route run, 2.71. He had nearly 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns in 2024. Like, how is this guy not higher than third round on a lot of people's boards? I don't get it. He's at 842 yards the year prior, and that was 6 touchdowns, right? He's forced 21 missed tackles. He has 14 deep catches, which is tied for 10th in the nation. He can also be used in the screen game. He's an outside receiver, but you can move him around. He can play in the slot. He's a versatile guy. And when you look at his RAS, the only thing that's really hurting him is his size. 5'10", we'll call him 5'11", because he's 5'10 and a half, 190 pounds. That's kind of where the Packers are at. Usually they like the receivers more around 200 pounds. But I think they're kind of opening their threshold a little bit at wide receiver. They're meeting with guys like Isaiah Bond. Good vertical, 36 and a half. Great speed. Runs a 4.42. 20-yard split's good. 10-yard split's good. So if he had better size, he'd have a 9+ RAS if he was 6 foot 195, but he's simply not. And again, I love Trey Harris, and if this, was my final mock and I'm just getting players that I really want, it would probably be Trey Harris. I have him over Kyle Williams, but I do want to switch it up a bit, and I want to go Kyle Williams, and it's not that far of a difference. Like, Kyle Williams is a great receiver coming out of this class, so we are going Kyle Williams, wide receiver out of Washington State, here at pick 93. So we're back on the board at 124. There was another situation that I was going to trade up, and it was, again, one pick right after. It was for Jamari Caldwell if he fell to 117. He would have plugged right into nose tackle for us, a guy that can really help against the run after losing TJ Slayton. Good run stop rate, 7.5%. Good pass rush rate as well. Coming off a 1-sack season, but had 6 sacks the year prior. Good player out of Oregon. That Oregon defensive line has a lot of good players coming out of it. 6'1", 340, so also fits the weight threshold for the Packers, who they like at nose tackle. And defensive line is getting a little bit thin in this draft class. I would have liked to address it earlier, but the way the board fell, getting Ezeraku, Ravel, and also Kyle Williams at 93, I really like how it fell there. But we do need to address defensive line, but I think I can wait a little bit longer. Caldwell was a guy I wanted. You could go Ty Robinson here. PFF criminally underrates him. He could go in the 4th round. He could go in the 3rd round. Ty Robinson is ranked 192 for them, but if you look at the consensus board, where is he at? Ty Robinson is actually at 111. And his peak was at 91. So that's 3rd to 4th round pick there. He's actually above Caldwell, who just went. Peebles, Peegs are guys that already went in this draft class, already went here. Peegs 2 picks before us here. So I think I'm going to try to trade down, pick up yet another pick. So maybe we can trade up, in the 5th round, 6th round, but still have, say, 9 to 10 picks when this draft is said and done. So maybe I'll try to trade down into the 130, something of that sort. So I'm going to trade down with the Baltimore Ravens. They pick at 136. So we'll be moving down, 12 spots. But we'll be picking up yet another pick right around this mark, 183. So then from New Orleans and Baltimore through Carolina, we'll have back-to-back picks, 183, 184. I'm okay moving down 12 spots here. Again, the way the board fell, we're also giving up 250, our final pick there in this 7th round. So that trade was accepted. Let's get down to our pick at 136, back end of the 4th round there. So I think I'm going to get a defensive lineman here. I traded down. I am going to go Riley Mills here. I wanted to more so get a nose tackle first, a guy that's really good against the run, and Riley Mills is more of a pass rusher type. But I still think the Packers could add someone like Riley Mills, someone to get more depth at that three tech position, a guy that's really good at getting after the quarterback, and he definitely was in 2024. He's coming off an 8-sack season for the Notre Dame defense, a really nice 14.3 pass rush win rate, a run stop rate still pretty decent, slightly below average, 5.3%. You see how much he lined up in the B gap, so more of that 3-tech guy on a defensive line for the Packers. He's definitely pretty lean for his height. He's 6'5", but just under 300 pounds. Now, the Packers have drafted 3-tech guys that are under 300 pounds, so that's not a worry for them there. He didn't test, so he doesn't have an RAS, so I can't really go off of that. But Riley Mills is definitely an interesting prospect, and I don't mind it here in the back end of the 4th round. We see his pros show some good strength, an instinct to stack and shed blocks. Hands are strong and violent. Good lateral quickness for stunts. The Packers ran so many stunts last year. Has the length to play almost any defensive line spot. Long arms to get in passing lanes for pass breakups. His cons are hands are violent but out of control at times. Naturally high pad level. Definitely got to clean that up. Must play more in control/balance and struggles to get off blocks in a timely manner. So there's the concerns, but there's also the pros there, the upside, the potential. And Riley Mills is an interesting prospect. He's not very young. He's almost 24 years old. So you're kind of getting a player that hopefully is more so pro ready. You can throw right into the mix. And again, it makes Colby Wooden expendable. And I think this would be an upgrade from Colby Wooden. I'm not that high on him. And I think the Packers could look to replace him, say here in the 4th round, with someone like Riley Mills. So we are going Riley Mills, defensive lineman out of Notre Dame, here at pick 136. All right, so we're on the board at 159. Again, we have a slew of picks coming from now to 200. We have 159, 183, 184, and 198. Then we finish it up with one pick in the back end of the 7th there at 237. So we're at 159. We've already gotten Donovan Ezaraku with our first pick at 23. We've addressed corner, addressed wide receiver, addressed D-line. Those are our 4 positions of need. So in terms of what we got in our first four picks, they were all at positions of need for the Green Bay Packers. So now we can start to get more depth, double up at certain positions. I still think we can get a tackle. I'm looking at someone like Logan Brown, maybe at our pick at 183, but will he fall to 183? That might not be an option there. There's some other options at tackle. Maybe I'll trade up slightly to try to also get Logan Brown, but someone that I feel like is definitely a Green Bay Packer type player. It's going to be Tyler Barron out of Miami. Also an edge with a lot of production. Now, the Packers still have Lucas Van Ness, Brenton Cox Jr., and Brenton Cox Jr. had one of the highest pass rush win rates to end last season, the back half of last season. Kingsley and Igbare, right? They have a lot of guys, but as I always say, you can never have enough pass rushers, and I think the Packers might double up at edge rusher in this draft class and get 2 guys that, had a ton of production. Tyler Barron coming off a 10-sack season for the Miami defense, a pass rush win rate of 18.7%, run stop rate 9.0. He's 6'5", 260, so really fits the bill for the Packers thresholds there. He has an 8.64 RAS and nearly 34-inch arms. They're 33.2, I believe, so close enough, I would think, for a 5th round pick at edge for the Packers. So we are going to go Tyler Barron, edge out of Miami, here at pick 159. I kid you not, it happened yet again. I was waiting till 175, and originally I was thinking 177, top of the 6th, wait for Logan Brown to fall there, trade up. And I was like, you know what? It's been happening where the player goes right before the pick I'm going to trade up for. I'm going to move it down to 175. And look what happened. Logan Brown goes at 174. Man, I've thought about trading up like 3 to 4 times in this draft, and every single time that player goes the exact pick right before my trade up spot. So we're going to have to go a different route at tackle. So at this rate, Logan Brown was the one guy I'd probably trade up for at this spot. So I'm just going to get to my pick at 183. All right, so we have back-to-back picks here, so it really doesn't matter who we pick at 183 in terms of who's going to be available at 184. And we're going to go another wide receiver. We're going to go Dante Thornton Jr., a guy that, take the top off of defense, tremendous speed. He's an interesting one because when you look at like his history, not only at Oregon, but at Tennessee, he just didn't get many opportunities. I don't know why, because it wasn't for a lack of talent. He just didn't get many snaps. But when he did, he had 25.5 yards per reception, but he just wasn't on the field much. 187 pass snaps, and even at Oregon, just wasn't on the field much. He had 26 receptions for 662 yards. That's very impressive for 187 pass snaps. 6 touchdowns this past season, 75.0 contested catch rate, average drop rate. Grade versus man coverage was decent, 68.9. When you take a look at his RAS, he has a 9.80. He's probably the most Packers threshold fit receiver in this entire class. He's very, very similar to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. 6'5", almost 205, ran a 4.3 40. His 20-yard and 10-yard splits are ridiculous. Not a tremendous vertical, 33 inches there, but a good broad at 10'6". Now, there definitely are other options at receiver, such as Ty Felton out of Maryland. I like him as well. Dante Thornton, Andrew Armstrong, PFF finally added him to their draft board. You know, you see the stats the past 3 seasons: 750 yards plus, 6'4", 202. I like Andrew Armstrong a lot. I like Elijah Badger a lot, but we already got Kyle Williams, more of that technician at wide receiver. You know, still decently fast, but more of a great route runner, guy that can be a quarterback's best friend. But we need that speed, that burner that we're going to be missing from Christian Watson, a guy that you can simply send on a 9 route and 1v1, he's going to go up and get a football or just outrun the cornerback. And that is Dante Thornton Jr. So we're going and double dipping at wide receiver after double dipping at edge. And we're going to go Dante Thornton Jr., receiver out of Tennessee, here at 183. So we had back-to-back picks. Again, I wanted Logan Brown, former Wisconsin offensive lineman, went at 174. So why not go with a current Wisconsin offensive lineman and Jack Nelson? I think he's an intriguing pick and a 6th-round lineman. The Packers tend to do a good job at drafting linemen later in the draft. And, you know, Wisconsin just continues to churn out, you know, good offensive linemen in the draft. Jack Nelson, a 3-year starter at left tackle, good pass block grade 82.2, good run block grade 75.2, allowed only 1 sack this past season, 1 quarterback hit, and 7 quarterback hurries. He's 6'7", 316. The Packers need depth at tackle. After not retaining Andre Dillard, the Packers don't have a crazy amount of depth at tackle. We saw Travis Glover in that Eagles game was horrendous. Kadeem Telfort, maybe more of a guard. So the Packers need depth at tackle. They have yet to sign one in free agency, which they still could do, sign a veteran right before the season or around training camp. They love their veteran swing tackles, so they could go that route, but I think drafting one in the 6th round is also a decent idea. So we are going to go Jack Nelson, tackle out of Wisconsin, here at pick 184. All right, so we're on the clock at 198. Man, this draft is killing me for players that I want that almost fall to our pick. Another one was Cam Jackson out of Florida, a guy that would plug right into to nose tackle for the Packers. I mean, tremendous 6'6", 342 player. Good run stop rate, 9.3%. I think he's going to be a draft steal. He's one of my favorite later round defensive linemen in this class. I was really hoping to get him at 198. So I think at this point, we need to go and get a defensive lineman, whether that's Cam Horsley, Zeke Biggers. Those are 2 guys that can play nose tackle. You know, we already got Riley Mills, a 3-tech guy that can rush the passer, so I don't really think doubling up there at Ty Robinson here, although great value. Like Ty Robinson, you know, almost certainly is not going to be available at 198. So kind of trying to remove that off this board right now just because it doesn't seem too realistic. But players that are realistic here at 198, I think, are Zeke Biggers, defensive lineman from Georgia Tech, and also Cam Horsley, who, just like Ezraku, played under Jeff Hafley, and he's a guy I've drafted a ton in mock drafts. Now, both of these defensive linemen are good athletes. They both have an above an 8.0 RAS, which the Packers usually don't, you know, need athletes at nose tackle. I believe John Ford, TJ Slayton weren't good RAS athletes. Zeke Biggers hasn't had a single sack the past 3 seasons, which is definitely concerning, but he does fit the Packers' size threshold a little bit better than Cam Horsley. You know, he's 6'6". The Packers tend to like their nose tackles at around 330, where Cam Horsley 6'4", 306. But Cam Horsley had a lot more production at nose tackle, you know, 14.4 run stop rate. I believe he had one of the highest, if not the highest, tackles for loss numbers in the entire nation. And again, he played under Jeff Hafley. So I'm sure, you know, this is a guy that Hafley will go, yeah, let's get him on our roster for my defense. Get Ezraku, Cam Horsley, guys that worked with me, Vince Ogobasi. It just makes a ton of sense. So let's go Cam Horsley, nose tackle, defensive lineman, guy that can fill in for what we lost in TJ Slayton, here at pick 198. We have one final pick at 237. I think I'm going to go for another cornerback. The Packers lost both Corey Ballantyne, Robert Rochelle, guys that played some special teams for them, and they need to replace those special teams snaps. So you're really going to, get a guy here that has versatility, can play special teams, and maybe turn into something at the cornerback position, just like Carrington Valentine did in the 7th round, just like Kalen King could turn into from the 7th round. And I think there's two options here that I like for the Packers. If you watched my cornerback video, both of these are maybe threshold fits for the Packers. It's Fenchel Cypress, the second from Florida State, and Mac McWilliams from UCF. Now, Cypress, mainly an outside cornerback, didn't have the best season this past year, 98.4 passer rating allowed, 52.9 completion percentage is pretty nice there. But Mac McWilliams gives you a lot of versatility. This is a guy that some people think could play safety. He can play nickel corner. He can play outside. That's what he's mainly played in his career. He also allowed a very low 69.3 passer rating allowed. I'm surprised that he's actually this low on a lot of people's boards, including the consensus big board. He was good in man coverage, good in zone coverage, decent against the run. We see here he had 12 coverage stops. He did miss 6 tackles, but I really like him as a prospect. A little bit on the smaller side, 5'10", 185. He has a 7.32 RAS, but did run a 4.4 140, so does have some speed there. I really like him. His average draft position is 237, and here we are, 237. So we are going Mac McWilliams with our final pick, corner out of UCF. All right, so let's go over this mock draft version 8.0. Man, I loved how this board fell for us. And, you know, our first 4 picks absolutely addressed the Packers' needs right now at edge, corner, receiver, defensive line. And to get Donovan Ezerako at 23, I think is 1, awesome value. 2, a guy that has a ton of production. 3, a guy that played under Jeff Hafley and was mentored by Packers defensive coach Vince Algobasi. It makes too much sense. And although he's a little bit lighter, a little bit shorter than the Packers like, I think all those other things are more valuable for the Packers. So that's why we went with him at 23. Savon Ravel fell all the way to 54. And if this happens, man, the Packers, I think, are getting a steal at 54. You know, he has so much potential. Coming off an ACL is definitely worrying, but with modern medicine and how players return from those, it's not too much of a worry for me. I think more so the worry is the level of competition. But man, he looked insane when you watch him on film against that level of competition. I think he will be a good corner at the NFL level. Kyle Williams at 93, finally getting the respect he deserves, so I wanted to give it to him here in the 3rd round. Trey Harris was available, which, you know, I love Trey Harris, but Kyle Williams is also a terrific option there in the 3rd round, a guy that has a ton of production, top 5 on a lot of people's boards. So if you snag him at 93, I think that's awesome value. Then we traded down with the Ravens to pick up yet another pick, and we went Riley Mills. Now, there were other defensive linemen that I like better than Mills, but with the way the board fell, he's a guy that also, you know, had really good production rushing the passer last year, coming off an 8-sack season. Same with Tyler Barron at 159, coming off a 10-sack season. Good pass rush win rate. Fits the Packers' thresholds at edge. Dante Thornton, a guy that definitely fits the Packers' thresholds at receiver. Tall, fast, just maybe not a ton of production. You know, a lot of people say the Packers only get receivers with some type of production. It's not true. MVS never had a 1,000-yard season, nor has Dante Thornton Jr. He's very, very similar to MVS, who I believe they got in the 5th or the 6th round back in the day out of, was it UCF? So this is like a pure Packers receiver here in the 5th to 6th round for sure. Jack Nelson, tackle out of Wisconsin. We need some tackle depth for sure on this team. Cam Horsley, another guy, played under Jeff Hafley, Vince Algobasi. It makes sense. Good against the run, plugs right into that nose tackle position. Had a ton of tackles for loss last year for Boston College. Then finally, we get another corner at 237. Special teams value, versatility, a guy that can play inside, outside, maybe even some safety. A guy that played some good ball at UCF. So I really like the pick there at 237 in terms of value. So that does it for version 8.0 of my Green Bay Packers 7-round mock draft. So 2 more after this, then the Brian Gutekunst mock. I'm still trying to really hone in on what Gutekunst is going to do, and I think I'm getting closer. I did a good job last year predicting Jordan Morgan and Edgerrin Cooper. Am I going to be able to do that again? We'll see. It's hard. It's very hard to predict the Packers, but let me know what you think of this mock draft down in the comments below. I think it hit on a lot of needs for the Green Bay Packers. Probably one of my favorite mocks in terms of value, what we got at our picks, and we also picked up extra draft picks. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. A reminder to go check out BetUsTV for more sports content. I'm going to link their YouTube down in the description below. But I really appreciate you guys coming by. I'll catch you on the next one, and as always, go Pack Go.